Hello, everyone. I see 9 of us here. See if that gets me right. We're, if you notice immediately, Roshi's not here. That's because he's in the hospital today. We got a message from Kathleen Murphy, who's been his primary liaison with the medical staff, and everything went well with the surgery. And he should be spending the night in the hospital, and the expected plan is he'll be released tomorrow with new cyborg knees. So that's going to be interesting to hear about. I think probably by now, it looks like all of us are old enough that we also know somebody who has metal knees. So it'll be interesting to hear how he does it. So when Roshi isn't with us, like often when he goes down for his trips to South America or his trips to Ohio, one of us gives a talk, leads the discussion, and that will be me tonight. And I like to say on this, I don't know what I'm going to say, because what I'm going to talk about is the koan Dijang's nearness, or Dijang's closeness, which is the koan of not knowing is most intimate. So, and what I like to do when I talk is hopefully not boring for people, but because it's most interesting to me, and that is play with the words somewhat and talk about the translation the translations from the Chinese, because for me, when we read them in English, I think we have a tendency, at least I noticed I have had over the years, until I started learning translation and kind of broke the habit of hearing the English words and grabbing them as if that's what the koan says, those words. Of course, when we work with the koan with a teacher like Roshi Daniel, the whole thing is opening up the words and finding the ground, the mind ground that the words are growing on or out of. But for the playing part of it, reading and entering into the koans, I really like to try to open up the words through seeing the way the translations work. Basically, it's connotations. Like when we hear a word, we frequently will just attach one connotation to that word. And we'll forget that can be 4 or 5 other connotations, and that some words actually have connotations that mean virtually 180-degree opposite of another connotation. So that's another thing that we play with and work with when we are sitting with koans. So I'm going to read 2 translations of this koan. One is from Thomas Cleary's Book of Serenity, and the other is going to be my translation. And then I'm going to just start from there. So this is case 20. Dijang asked Fayan, "Where are you going?" Fayan said, "Around on pilgrimage." Dijang said, "What is the purpose of pilgrimage?" Fayan said, "I don't know." Dijang said, "Not knowing is nearest." Now, my translation, I throw in more of the literal aspects of it. Dijang asked Fayan, "When you get up from sitting, where are you bound?" Yan said, "Meandering about foot traveling." Zhang said, "The business of foot traveling, how do you make it live? Or how do you make it alive?" Yan said, don't know. Zhang said, don't know is very close, or not knowing is very close, or not knowing is closest. Yan opened thus to a great awakening. I don't know why Cleary leaves off that last line, that where it's the Yan Fayan opened to a great awakening, and this is the first in Fayan's career. This is like he's been studying, and he's gone on the pilgrimage, or as the literal translation is, meandering about foot traveling, or traveling on foot. And this is like the postgraduate studies of the Zen teachers. And so he's going from Zen teacher to Zen teacher, having encounters. And he gets to Dijiang and has this encounter. And then in the original text, it has the last line, Fayan opened thus to a great awakening. And for some reason, Cleary doesn't include that line, which is some of the baffling things I find out when I start looking at the original text. But the thing is, for us, any of us who've been around Zen for a while, we'll know that the last thing that Dijiang said is often translated differently than Cleary's not knowing is nearest, or mine don't know is closest, or don't know is very close. Because it often says, Dijiang said, not knowing is most intimate. And I've seen it, non-knowing is most intimate. So that's sort of kind of like my starting off point, which is sometimes when it's said as most intimate, that connotes to some people, and when I say that, I mean, I've heard people talk about it this way, that not knowing is somehow the end of the line, the ultimate terminal of Zen practice. Oh, to just not know. And you'll hear some people take that as like it's, in the 19th century, there was the political party called the Know-Nothings. And so they kind of will turn Buddhism into being a know-nothing person, as if that's what it is. And so that when someone has that sort of perspective, they think they don't have to consider koans, they don't have to study the Buddha Dharma, they don't have to read the sutras or read the koans. They just have to know nothing and be happy. Well, more power to them. And I'm not going to say that anybody's path is wrong when they put their foot forward. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here in the Buddha Dharma. But this not knowing is very, very special, because it is pointing to something that is essential and integral to the Buddhist teachings. And this is why I like it. It's when Cleary translates it as nearest, or I'll translate it as closest, or very close. It's pointing at there's getting to the know nothing is like the top of the 100-foot pole. Still, it's very close. It's the nearest, but it's the nearest because we have to take the next step off of the pole. Because if as long as we're attached to the idea of know nothing, we're still on the top of the pole. And so that's what I like to point to. One of my favorite treatises is called the Treatise on the Mahayana Arousing of Faith. It was translated as Awakening of Faith. And So we know that treatise mostly by that name. But in the opening section where it's talking about the mind, that the one mind of true suchness is the foundation of the Buddha Dharma. It says this one mind appears in two ways. It appears as true suchness, and it appears as birth and extinction. And in the section where it's talking about the one mind appearing as true suchness, it says, it has this section about words, and it says, when words are understood to be suchness, then we use words to banish words. And I think that's the key, that's one of the keys I have in approaching the words, both in the koans collections and in the Sutras and the teachings, that our words are always a springboard to get off of the words. And that is, to me, what it means by using words to banish words. And what these two words, not knowing or don't know, are pointing to. The Korean teacher Sun Song always said, "Don't know mind," and he's talking about these same two characters in the Chinese, not knowing, unknowing, or non-knowing. Now, this word of know, to know, also means to be aware. So this is where we have to start realizing that when it says don't know or not knowing, it doesn't mean to put a sack over our head and not think, not know, not see, not hear, except in that sense that it means that according to the Heart Sutra, which also says, don't see, don't hear, don't think, no sound, no taste, no touch, no thinking. So we have to understand that by adding that word know, it's not a literal thing of don't do it or don't, when it says no seeing, it doesn't mean cover our eyes and not see. When it says not knowing, it doesn't mean close our mind down and don't think about anything. Huineng in the Platform Sutra gives us the key to this when he talks directly about no thinking. He says that in Zen, he says no characteristics is the foundation of Zen, and he says no thinking is the lineage of Zen. And when he describes no thinking, he says no is what? No is non-dual. Thinking is what? Thinking is suchness. So as he uses it, no thinking or non-thinking is the non-dual suchness that arises in our awareness. So in this sense, when Dijong says not knowing is most intimate, this is what he's referring to. The not is the non-dual knowing, and non-dual knowing is the most intimate aspect of our own minds. Our non-dual awareness is the closest that we get until we open to a great awakening. And I think that's what Dijong and Fayan were doing there in that exchange. Dijong asks him, well, you're sitting, and when you get up from sitting, where are you going to go? He says, well, I'm on my pilgrimage. I'm meandering about, traveling on foot. And so Dijong says, this business of traveling on foot, how do you make it alive? How do you make it live? And that phrase, how do you make it alive? How do you make it live? Is really a core expression in the koans. that we don't usually get in translation, because usually the translations are less literal, are less concrete. And so like Cleary translates it as, what is the purpose of pilgrimage? But that's not what the literal translation is on the page. The page says, how do you make it alive? And this is, I like this because it really is, it points to the Zen teacher is not asking, well, give me an intellectual explanation. Why do we go on pilgrimage? Why, where he's going to say, well, I'm going on the pilgrimage because I'm needing to meet more teachers and get a better perspective on my understanding, etc. That's not what he's asking when he says, what's the purpose of the pilgrimage? And so when we hear it translated as this business of traveling on foot, how do you make it alive? The teacher, Dijang, is really focusing it right into the heart of Fayan, the question. And Fayan is stopped. And that's the best part of an interchange with a teacher. And that's really what makes a koan. If you really want to know what a koan is, it's an exchange. They're all different, but the primary or the main curve or arc of the koan is that it's an exchange, and somebody says something that makes the other person stop cold in their tracks, and or it's that thing that makes them see that they're standing at the edge of the springboard, or that it's a word, and it's often called a turning word, that stops us and makes us have to banish all the words that we've been trying to hold on to. That's why I like that phrase, that using words to banish words is what this is doing. So when he says, well, this business of foot traveling, how do you make it alive? Yan gets stopped and he says, I don't know. The Chinese doesn't have the character for I. They have they don't use pronouns as prolifically as we do in English. So it can be just, I don't know, or it can just be not knowing, or it could just be don't know. So take your pick, play with that. It says it could be, how do you make it alive? He could be trying to say, well, I don't know how to make it alive. I'm just doing it. He could be trying to say, well, I make it alive by not coming up with an intellectual knowing about it. I'm just not knowing. I'm doing it and I'm not knowing. Dijang says, well, that's very close, or that's most intimate. So then Fayan has his great opening, his great awakening. And I like that it's not like the answer don't know is his awakening. It's when the teacher says back to him, that which you just expressed is the most intimate thing that can be said. Then Fayan goes, and it says he opens to a great awakening. I like that phrase. He opens. In the koans, we often see it in two ways. He opens to a great awakening, or he falls to a great awakening. A lot of times you'll hear the translation, he had a great awakening. And that's usually not what it says. It usually says either he opens thus to a great awakening, as it says here, and I've seen it as he fell into a great awakening. So that's where we're at there. Now, I'm going to try something, because as I was thinking about this, considering this and where we were going to go with it, I saw something from Mike on Facebook. And it was what I call synchronicity. So I'm going to try to share it if I can here. There we go. So I don't really know what you see. Hopefully you see three ladies sitting on a screen. The one in the middle with her shoulder to us is Cass Elliott. The one with the guitar is Joni Mitchell. And the other lady is Mary Travers from Peter, Paul, and Mary. And this is from the Mama Cass show. So let's see if I can, what do we got here? Okay, here we go. Let's see, cross my fingers. Do you hear it? Do you hear the guitar? Okay.
Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air, river canyons everywhere. I looked at clouds that rain, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, up and down, and still somehow it's all cloud illusions. I recall, I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels that dizzy dancing where you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions. I recall, I really don't know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds. I've looked at life that way, but now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads, they say I've changed. For something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions. I recall, I really don't know life at all. I've looked at life from both sides now, up and down, and still somehow it's life's illusions. I recall, I really don't know life at all.
So that's our foray into multimedia. And I think if once you're reminded of what that song's about, you can see how it's basically a Bodhisattva Joni Mitchell giving the same teaching about not knowing. It's such an impressive song. It really is like a one of the sutras in our sutra service, where it's dealing directly with the duality of the things that she talks about. Rain and snow on everyone. The clouds at first are all the pretty things that you see, ice cream castles, and then they block the sun, and rain and snow on everyone. Seeing clouds from both ways. It's clouds illusions, I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. So that's really pretty direct and clear. And again, these are the kinds of words that banish words and bring us just into the space of awareness without having to measure it in that way. She goes on with love and the looking at love at both sides, the give and take. It's love's illusions, I recall. I really don't know love at all. And goes on to just, life as a whole. Again, this is all, we're all foot traveling, meandering about foot traveling. We're all in a pilgrimage. And she says, I've looked at life from both sides now, win and lose, up and down. It's life's illusions, I recall. I really don't know life at all. And so there she's talking about this sense of what we see and what we hear and what we think and perceive always has this illusory quality to it, because that's where we're attaching knowing to it. Oh, I know what I see. I know that's a bed. I know that's a car. And so by that knowing and labeling and putting a name on everything, we think that we know what's happening around us and we know where we are. And that's an essential quality of being a human, having that knowing how to identify things and put things into a place of our mental map, our world map that we create with our mind of everything. And that's how we survive on the day-to-day spot. And that's one kind of knowing. But we have this thing of, at first, there were mountains and rivers, and then there were no mountains and rivers, and then there were mountains and rivers. And the not knowing is the essential phase of going through they were not mountains and rivers, where we let go of all this sense of everything, that what we think we know is, to where we give up the words, we give up the categories of knowing. And then we see that everything we thought we knew is really sort of a mind-made illusion. And we really don't know what it is in that sense. And yet we're living it, we're doing it, we're still on the pilgrimage, we're still meandering about, foot traveling. We really don't do anything other than that. But we do it with this sense of, I really don't know what it is that we're doing. Now, Zongmi, the 9th century Zen teacher, Zongmi, he did a little twist on this, and he emphasized the word knowing. He said, Zen is about the one word know, the one word aware, to be aware. And in this sense, what he's doing is he's pointing to suchness of our own awareness. And as we sit in awareness without intellectual categories, without the words reaching out and trying to label everything, that straight awareness and that straight knowing is it. So he approaches it in this way. This is what happens in the non-dual approach, because in the non-dual approach, you can approach it as straight knowing or as not knowing. So when we get to the knowing, it's like when Joni, Bodhisattva Joni sings, "It's life's illusions I recall." That's a statement of knowing. And then, "I really don't know life at all." That's a statement of both knowing and not knowing. Because to be able to say, "I really don't know life at all," that's knowing. So we always have to approach it in some manner that brings us back to our basic heart mind awareness, that's not trapped in a sense of it is or it isn't. As Nagarjuna said, we have to let go of is won't get it, is not won't get it, both is and is not won't get it, and neither is or is not won't get it. So then what do we do? The problem is Nagarjuna just leaves us with, well, it's up to you, figure it out. So that's a good koan. But a lot of times what we have is someone just saying, well, it's most intimate. What is the most intimate? That's the answer to the quandary, the tetralemma of Nagarjuna. Some people would say, well, have a cup of tea. Or, gee, the crows outside on the tree are particularly loud tonight. So I'll leave it right there. And if anyone wants to share, say something and put your voice into the mix here, please unmute yourself and give us a thought or consideration.
It's really interesting to learn about the translation very close, because most intimate implies, to our ears, implies praise, but very close can also can mean, as you implied, take the next step too. Leaves that possibility in there.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I think that's exactly the point of getting to look at those words with a little bit of extra consideration like that.
I had a thought. Can you say something about, often it's described as sort of two types of not knowing. There's just the conventional, like, I don't know what time it is. And a not knowing as in it can't be known, and it can't even be talked about, not knowing, which there's lots of stories of that kind of not knowing. So I'm not quite sure where in what you're describing, it feels that if we take the translation kind of most intimate, or sort of very close, as in, as praise, like Phil said, then that feels like that secondary type of not knowing, a kind of where you learn just to shut up. If someone says, explain what love is, it's often just best not to try and explain what love is, for example. Or, well, actually, Joni, I was thinking about that before you put that song up. Joni says exactly that. And that song is so beautiful because she ends every one of those verses with the not knowing. It's what makes it so beautiful. If she'd said something a little different, it probably wouldn't be nearly so nice. So there is a kind of a not knowing that seems to really hit the mark, which is when you don't know exactly the right time about exactly the right thing. So do you have any thoughts on, there's a difference between those types of not knowing?
Yes, I would say it's the third kind of not knowing that I'm talking about. There's a not knowing. Chicago Transit Authority has a song, "Does anybody really know what time it is?" And so that's that first kind of not knowing you're talking about. Well, what time is it, Gregory? Oh, I don't know. I left my watch at home and I don't know what time it is. So that is one kind of knowing, not knowing. Or the other one I think that you were pointing to is what I was talking about was Nagarjuna is not knowing. Whatever I say is not going to encapsulate it. It's not going to be able to communicate the core of it or the essence of it. So I'll just be quiet. But that is not what we're talking about here, because that's the error I was trying to initially point out.
Yeah, I agree. That is a different type of not knowing, the Nagarjuna one. It's more, I think that is more an intellectual not knowing. A clear, deep analysis means we cannot locate anything anywhere. We cannot locate the present. We cannot locate cause and effect, and so on. That is a deeply philosophical analytic not knowing, which I think is incredibly beautiful too. But this not knowing you're talking about is, I've never heard of it that way. It's like a third one. 1, 2, 3. I like that.
Yeah. And I think going back to the song, that's what is getting us towards that, because she's saying, just to kind of paraphrase it and stuff, she's saying that at one point I looked at clouds this way. That's why the song is called Both Sides Now. Mm-hmm. At one point I looked at clouds this way. At another point I looked at clouds that way, which was different than the first way. Now I really don't know. It says it's clouds illusions. I've seen it. Every way I look at clouds is if I'm going to call it something, well, it's an illusion of how I was looking at it at that time. Now I really don't know clouds at all. That's not silence, though. That's what I think is so great about it. It's the way of using the words to go to the next step of being wordless. Because if we're just silent, that doesn't get us there. That's why the way out of it that many of the Zen stories have is that somebody gets slapped or somebody gets poked in the ribs, because something has to be transmitted, something has to be communicated. We have to meet as people, sharing this intimacy. And so the ultimate issue is, how do we meet each other intimately and share it? So I think that's the question of the third kind of not knowing. It's the direct sharing of what's happening right here and now, without confusing it with maps and all those kinds of things that we're thinking about.
And I just want to say one more thing, if you don't mind.
No, of course.
So thinking of the standing on top of the 100-foot pole in relation to this conversation, the first not knowing is walking up to a pole and just not knowing what it is and being kind of interested but not knowing. And then maybe climbing all the way up as sort of Nagarjuna's not knowing. And then the final not knowing is just letting yourself fall right off the top.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Kamala, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah,
No?
I'm trying to form though what it's kind of hard for me to form what I really want to ask or say, or so maybe I'll just blah and give it a chance here. So I view the not knowing, the intimacy of not knowing as being the closest, because it catapults you back to the self. And the the mystery for me, which I wanted to know if you could say something about, is in that moment, what really happens? Because in that moment, it means that everything opens up for your life, for the rest of your life, for your life. But what happens to do that? What makes that happen? Or is that a great mystery? What is that creates that profound opening in that moment?
Yeah, I agree. It's a very mysterious process.
Yeah.
It's not a great mystery in the sense of a mystery novel. It's a great mystery of the perception of our own awareness. Because it's a great, when you said it catapults us back to the self. Last week, Roshi talked about Eko Hensho, the turning about. That's catapulting back that you just said is just what he was talking about last week, the turning around, the turning back, the turning about. And when we do that, we're not turning away from what we perceive. It's what we're turning away from is the idea of everything we know about what we perceive. We're just letting that go. So that question of catapulting back to the self is the question of when we turn the light around and reflect, we're no longer reaching outward to a perceived objective world. We're doing what Dogen said, is we're letting the world confirm us instead of us trying to go out and grab the world to confirm it. And so what we see is this self is what is sometimes called the true self, the genuine self, but it's really the unknown self. It's the self that is selving without being or thinking or needing to be a self. So we have to, talk about, again, it's the awareness, the plain, pure awareness that is within the awareness that is aware of everything that's delusional. All of our mistakes we're aware of, and that's part of the unknown knowing. All of our insights are part of the known unknowing. And it all catapults us back to realizing that it's not a matter of inside and outside. The whole thing is seamless. This whole universe is seamless.
Yeah.
And so that's the mystery, that when I see you and I have this crazy thing of an image of you on a computer screen and the sound of your voice coming through the computer screen, there is still the reality that awareness is being shared in a call and response of what I call the one mind. the one true suchness of mind. So that to me is what's so mysterious, is that we can walk around thinking we're all different people, and at the core, what we call self is really a total unity of the universe and all awareness.
That's great. I like the call and response is so beautiful. That's really nice. Thank you, Gregory. That was great. Thank you.
Looking at the time. Phil, have you got your accoutrements ready?
Yes, indeed.
Uh-oh, it looks like Mike has dropped off. So I thought Mike.
He said he said he was going to have to duck out.
Yeah. So right, he didn't say when though. So my question was, I'm going to try to see. While you get ready, Phil, I'm going to try to see if I can find a way to.
You know how to share your screen, Gregory. You got it, man. You're the master.
Well, we're going to try, aren't we? I'm going to try to share the screen so that the words of the Heart Sutra are up for those of us who don't have it memorized. There we go. Okay, I thought, yeah, here we go. I thought Mike was going to do this. And okay, so let's see.
Well, now you know about that thought, right?
Yeah, okay, I think I've got it. All right, so now I'm going to put it here and see if I can make this share screen thing work again. Okay.
Success.
Okay, Phil, I think we can do it.
Interesting. I'm looking at my own larger version of the sutra on my screen, and although I have that application in the front, the okay, there I'm getting to move the All right, I've minimized the thumbnails of us so I can see it all. Just technical difficulties. Okay. The Great Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva practicing the Prajna Paramita clearly saw that all five skandhas are empty, transforming all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness, no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness, exactly form. Sensation, perception, mental reaction, consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all things are essentially empty, not born, not distinct, not stained, not pure, without loss, without gain. Therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no sensation, perception, mental reaction, consciousness, no I, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no color, sound, smell, taste, touch, object of thought, no seeing, and so on to no thinking, no ignorance, and also no ending of ignorance, and so on to no old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death, no suffering, cause of suffering, cessation path, no wisdom, and no attainment, since there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva lives by Prajnaparamita, with no hindrance in the mind, no hindrance, and therefore no fear, far beyond elusive thinking. Right here is nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future live by Prajnaparamita, attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore know that Prajnaparamita is the great sacred mantra, the great vivid mantra, the unsurpassed mantra, the supreme mantra, which completely removes all suffering. This is truth, not mere formality. Therefore set forth the Prajnaparamita mantra. Set forth this mantra and proclaim Gate, Gate, Kara Gate, Kara Samgate, Bodhisattva.
Bodhisattva.
The four great vows. The many beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. The Buddha way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. The many beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. The Buddha way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. The many beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. The Buddha way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully.
Thank you all. Thank you, Gregory. What a wonderful talk.
Okay, I think if you want to say something, unmute yourself because I can't figure out how to unmute everybody together. Here we go. Huh. Okay, nice to see you, Richard. Richard, where are you in the world?
In Washington, Auburn, Washington.
Right. Okay, what city?
Auburn, which is south of Seattle.
Did you get involved in any of the Portland activities or the Seattle activities?
No, I'm of the, they don't recommend older people take more risks.
No, that's right. That's why I have not been getting out on the street also. Carol and I are not getting on the street either for that same reason.
And it's too bad because our hearts are there, right?
Yeah.
But I'm really glad to stopped in and visit with you guys. This is really, really
nice, yeah. good, good.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see the face.
Yeah, well, I've been busy lately. I've spent the COVID time writing a book, so
Oh,
a
well,
memoir.
we'll all anxiously await to see that.
Well, if I can get your email addresses, I'll I'll send it down. If one of you
Okay.
can send me an email, I will send it down, and you can spread it around. How about that?
Did you get the email notice for this meeting? Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's that. Give me that, and then I can share it with everybody. If you reply to that email, then I can share that. Do you want to give us a teaser what the book's about?
Well, it could be called Buddhism for Humans, or it could be called One Sandal Zen.
All right, good.
I like One Sandal Zen a whole lot, actually. It's right now. It's called The Man of No
Yeah.
Distinction.
Well, it. Okay. Do you have that One Sandal Zen as the Bodhidharma reference?
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I've got that in my other room. I've got the Bodhidharma standing there holding the one sandal in his hand.
Right. It was figured that might be too obscure for people. It works for me, and you obviously.
Yeah. Well, you have to just tell the story at the beginning for people to understand it. Yeah.
I think I would. Yeah. Right.
That's I don't know. Does
needs a
everybody
publisher
know
and all
that
that sort of stuff
story?
before you have to worry about that.
Yeah. When Bodhidharma died, they put him in his coffin, and then weeks or months later, somebody came back to the city and said, "Hey, I just saw Bodhidharma crossing the mountains to go into India, and he had one sandal with him." And everybody said, "No, he died. We buried him." And so they went and they dug up his coffin, and the only thing left in the coffin was one sandal. So this is the Buddhist resurrection story. It's the archetype of resurrection in the Buddhist genre. Yeah.
He was a very, very famous jurist, a high official who has total impeccability. I mean, and he knew
Right.
Bodhisattva.
Yeah. Was the guy who saw him, right?
And here he was barefoot with one
Right,
sandal.
and it was because he had, right.
Gregory, let him talk.
Yeah. But because he was such an impeccable official, that's why they said, "Oh, well, we better dig up his grave and find out."
Exactly, because he was unimpeachable. He was right. So that's magic, huh?
Well, I'm looking forward to that now.
Okay, it'll be going this evening. Thank you all. This has been really, really wonderful.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
All right.
Good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Gregory.
All right. See you next week, if not sooner.
Yes.
Gregory. Thank you, everybody.
Mhm.